Fantasy Intervention. Now here to intervene with your fantasy life, Chase Vernon.
That's right. What's going on, guys? I am here to intervene with your fantasy football life, and tonight we're going to be talking some DFS. So I've got a lot going on, guys, and I needed some help. So I reached out to one of my favorite DFS guys out there. You know, some guy that not only do I enjoy his hot sauce, I also enjoy his hot takes when it comes to his DFS, and how he constantly wins people money. So I brought Bo McBigtime in with me. What's going on, Bo? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's a Saturday night. Game day is almost upon us.
Close.
What more could you want? And I'm loving the heavy bass line on the intro.
I know, right?
Got me vibing.
Dude, it kind of gives me a little bit of adrenaline rush. I'm not even going to lie. Like, I'm actually really excited.
Yeah.
No,
Let's go, baby.
It's fun, man. I need to figure out how to kind of phase it in so it doesn't just, completely quit on us. But I'm working on that. Got a bunch of other things in the work for, of course, at Join Our Circle. So, yeah, real quick, Bo, let everybody know where to find you, where to find your articles for DFS and how you're qualified, man.
All right. So you can find me on Twitter at Bo_McBigtime. I write about 5 articles a week now. For at NimbleWNumbers, nimblewnumbers.com/Bo-knows-DFS. Those I write 2 articles for Scott Simpson there, where we break down kind of your risers and fallers from week to week on the DFS slates. And then I do a Friday article that builds 3 different example lineups, and it gives reasoning for how to build a successful lineup and pick the right contest to match with that lineup. I also write hot takes for podcasticnetwork.com. It's called Picantix, sponsored by my Hotbox hot sauce. And then I also have an article I do now called Surprisingly Spicy Stacks, and that's on Hammerjacks. And so it's go Hollywood Titan. Me too, buddy. Me too. Cheers up. But yeah, you're pretty much going to find me on Twitter propping up all of my work, all of my friends' work. You can't miss me. If you really want to read my stuff, it's not that hard to find.
Well, I missed you. I absolutely missed you because of the fact that, you haven't been on in a minute, man. It's been a while since we had you on. And not only are you just on, but you're now part of the Fantasy Intervention team. So I'm very, very excited. And I'm excited for this show sheet that you wrote, because I was going through it and I'm like, man, I never thought about that. And I never thought about, certain other things. And it's like, of course, Bo would bring up guys that I don't think about. So it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, my convoluted mind thinks outside the box to a fault sometimes. But I had a lot of fun writing the show sheet for today so that we can really dive into the types of matchups that are on the board that people aren't on all over the place. Like, I don't want to see the big total on the over-under sheet. Like, I kind of want to pick out the ones that are 48 to 51 instead of 55, 57 that are more likely to hit 57 than the ones that are predicted to go there. And that's what I like to live in that realm.
And that's the best realm to live in, by the way, guys. Like, I've talked about it before. The average ownership percentage for a winning team is anywhere from 12% up to 16%. And that's when you take all guys factored in and you end up averaging out their ownership. Now, you'll have some lineups that have like 8% that get lucky every once in a while. You'll have some lineups that, is all chalk and they just played one lucky guy like an Andy Isabella type player. But the average ownership range is normally from 12 to 16% for those Millie Maker winners. And that's because, hey, you're getting away from some of the guys that everybody else is playing. Meanwhile, you still have some of that chalk sprinkled in. Now, let's go ahead and let's dive into the show sheet and tell us what to expect for Week 11 in this main slate.
So it's just so diverse. Like last week, a lot of players had a hard time. There were a lot of duds on the board last week, but there were some obvious obvious plays that we did play last week where the average Joe can actually win last week, where the pay lines were super low because all your sharps, if you want to call them sharps or experts at DFS, they all had a bad week last week. And the people like me who kind of think outside the box, they slammed it hard last week because we took advantage of those lower pay lines with some out of the box thinking that the sharps were a little, I mean, they consider themselves hipsters of the game. So they were too far ahead of the curve and it didn't work out. And so we cashed in last week. This week's totally different. This week, there's so many different values you can play that I'm actually tossing ownership percentage considerations out. I'm not worried about it this week because there's going to be so many different focuses. That's just how I see it. Is I see more scoring than last week by a long shot. We have a lot of indoor games, so less weather is going to be considered, and it's just too many good offenses going against bad defenses this week to worry about if Dalvin Cook's going to be 50% owned. You might still want to have him, and you might still need to have him. That's the kind of thing we're looking at.
Yeah, and as we see, FCF Edward or FCF _Edward, point out Amari Cooper is 54 in cash. We're actually going to bring up the Cowboys in this matchup because we actually love the Cowboys for this week, but it might be in a little bit different direction than what you're actually expecting. So. Okay. With that being said, the biggest thing that I noticed was the fact that there are 5 dome games. 5 dome games this upcoming weekend. We've been so used to this bad weather, right? Like, the Raiders and the Browns. Cleveland. Which, by the way, like the whole Cleveland, Philadelphia thing still isn't going to be good weather. They have like a 69% chance. No, 64% chance of rain.
Yeah. It's bad when rainy and a little breezy is actually good weather for Cleveland.
True. I mean, it's been that rough, but that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing that I noticed was the fact that how much I wish the Chiefs and Raiders game was actually, I'm not going to say I wish it was. I'm actually kind of glad that it's not on the slate because it would become so chalky with the Chiefs and the Raiders, So keep in mind, guys, with the Chiefs and the Raiders, this game is still playable, but it is a Sunday night matchup. There are 11 players on the COVID list right now that have to test prior to the game. 10 of them are on defense. We know the Chiefs aren't going to let up, after
is that bad?
God, dude, almost every starter on there. Who's the starter that's not? That's what I want to know. It's got to be like a cornerback or a safety.
He's going to be in a bubble all week. I guarantee that guy's just like, he just encased himself in an ice sheet.
He's the only one practicing on the field. They're like sitting there running drills 1 on 11. Like
he's wearing a bubble and a bright orange vest. Don't come near me. I am poisonous.
Oh God. All right. So let's go ahead and hop into the first matchup that you pointed out. What is that one going to be?
Atlanta at New Orleans. That's a 51.5 total. New Orleans is favored by 4 points. And so we have a good deal of Saints plays in this game. Taysom Hill is now, he's been named the starter by the media, who's been on the inside with Sean Payton. Sean Payton hasn't done anything to confirm this, but it looks like Taysom Hill is going to get a lot of playing time.
Really? Sean Payton never confirmed that. I never actually looked into it.
Yeah, he didn't confirm it, but everybody who's in the media around him said that Taysom Hill is getting all the first team reps. That's true. That's been on camera. It just seems like if Jameis Winston is going to see the field, it's going to be in a negative game script where they're just coming back. But I see Taysom Hill's a huge play at 4,800. And surprisingly not chalky. I'm really shocked that people just don't have any confidence in him. And I get it. I mean, he hasn't played real quarterback since he's come into the league. So I mean,
I expect that chalk to raise once we get closer.
Me too.
That chalk has to go up like around 12 o'clock or so as the game closes in. But yeah, so who's he going to be throwing to?
A lot of Alvin Kamara. To be honest, I don't see them doing much throwing downfield with Taysom Hill, even though I think he's capable of it. I mean, he impressed me at BYU, and he's very, very intelligent, and he knows that system very, very well. That might be the reason why he got the nod over Jameis Winston, is because he's just been in the system longer. He knows the whole playbook front and back, probably from every position, better than anybody else. And so that plays a big part in Sean Payton's confidence in his starting quarterback in a divisional game. So I do see. I was even going to play Taysom Hill if Jameis Winston was announced as starter. That was going to be my little wild card play, was a ground and pound attack from the Saints using their two main weapons, Hill and Kamara, all the time. Like, we're talking 40 to 50 touches between the two of them. And we know what they can do. And they're priced. I mean, Kamara's priced up, Hill's priced down, and I'm actually going to throw their defense in there because I don't like Matt Ryan in a tough game. He beats up on the bad ones, but he doesn't seem to do anything when the chips are put in the middle of the table there.
So with me, right, like the big reason why Taysom Hill's actually getting the play over Jameis Winston is because if Jameis Winston ends up playing well and they don't know what they have with Taysom Hill, then now they're going to owe Taysom Hill, $11 million next year or $12 million next year guaranteed plus the bonuses. Then they're also potentially going to have to pay Jameis Winston, who's going to be a free agent, without knowing what Taysom Hill has. So now all of a sudden they're in lockstep with having this great starting quarterback who's the perfect replacement for Breeze and Jameis Winston, and having to double up and having to pay another $11 million for Taysom Hill. They need to make sure that that's not going to be the case, going forward, and that Taysom Hill cannot be the answer, rather than seeing if Jameis Winston is the answer. So that's the big reason as to why. But back to DFS and the outlook with this, I'm kind of interested a little bit with Callaway. And is Traquan Smith actually going to play this week? Is he being ruled out yet? That's what I want.
No official word on Traquan Smith. He's trending neutral, I guess. We haven't heard much about him in the last few days. But I would take that as a game time decision. So Callaway's in play if Traquan can't go. If Traquan goes, you don't play Callaway. Play Traquan if you're daring enough to go after a wide receiver in this game.
Yeah, I would actually absolutely love to play Traquan Smith if he plays. Traquan Smith is a bigger, more physical version of Michael Gallup. They play the same exact position. They play on the left-hand side of the field, right? They run a go route, and they go up and they try and get the ball. Like with Traquan Smith, with Michael Thomas being injured, he was completely out of his role. In college, he averaged, over 14 yards per reception in his sophomore year or his first year. Maybe that was his freshman year. In his second year, he averaged over 15. Then in his final year, he averaged over 20 yards per reception with 13 touchdowns. He was a deep target. He is a deep target. He was completely miscast when Michael Thomas was gone. Towards the tail end of last season, we saw the same exact thing happen where he actually got utilized when Drew Brees started to trust him a little bit more. And he did put up some fantasy relevant weeks. I'm hoping that Taysom Hill, who, by the way, gets put in when they need some big time plays and those deep targets, he gets put in the game. And, he works off the play action a lot. He works off of the RPO. But either way, Traquan Smith, if he plays, could be a huge option. If not, I like Callaway. How are you feeling about Callaway?
It's your Z replacement. I mean, Michael Thomas is going to be on the field at the X. He's going to run a lot of slants and stop and go routes. The thing we saw early on when Michael Thomas went out was Traquan taking over that X role. And when he couldn't cut it, as in he was underperforming, they saw it on tape. They were lucky that Emmanuel Sanders had got enough of the offense in his brain to take over that role. And they did switch 2 weeks in to where they put Traquan back on the offside and put Emmanuel Sanders in Michael Thomas's role. And that's where you saw that switch in volume that we witnessed. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders was nothing when Michael Thomas went out because the Z receiver in the Saints offense doesn't do anything. He's there just to get the X open. And then we saw Emmanuel Sanders step into that X role, and again, all the volume goes to that guy. So, I mean, Emmanuel Sanders is a good play when he's on the field. Traquan Smith, and he's your wild card. He's priced down. He's a big play guy. And if he's healthy enough, you're going to get some points out of him. If all he needs is a couple of connections.
Yeah, it's something else where, once again, he has to be healthy. Callaway, if he's not healthy, they're worth the plays at a very, very, kind of dicey type play. But, if we're stacking, when it comes to Taysom Hill and then Kamara, I'd be willing to take a shot on one of these guys outside of Michael Thomas.
Right. And I'm fading Thomas this week just because I don't know what he's going to do. And I really don't have a lot of faith that he's going to be able to hit a ceiling game in a GPP. I mean, you want to play those guys that have a potential of, like, you can tell a story about what's going to happen in the game. And I can't tell a story where Michael Thomas has a 10 for 150 game. It doesn't come up.
That makes sense. Now, would you rather stack the side of Matt Ryan in this game, or would you rather stack the side of Taysom Hill? Because that's what we're looking at right now. We're looking at stacks. We're looking to build our base of our lineup.
I mean, you can. I see the script being either a shootout or a blowout. It's going to be the Saints by 1,000,000, or it's going to be the Falcons passing the ball successfully. I don't see any scenario where they can run on the Saints. And so if they're going to be one-dimensional, they're either going to break out with Julio and a healthy Ridley. If Ridley's going, then him and Hurst and Julio are going to be a problem for the Saints. They don't match up well in secondary with the Falcons' weapons. But I also see the scenario where Matt Ryan's pressing because he's so one-dimensional in this game. And when Matt Ryan presses, he makes mistakes. So I'm more leaning to the side of Taysom Hill, Kamara, Saints defense, and then rolling it back with Julio, who's going to be your most stable receiving threat for the Falcons.
Makes sense. I mean, I think I'm going to go that route too, and I think I'm going to stay a hell away from Gurley.
Right. No Gurley, no Quadri Ellison, no Brian Hill. None of those guys are going to do anything.
But I kind of like the idea of potentially rolling out Hurst, although he could end up leaving the game in a hearse. It's just,
Ooh, I see what you did there.
I thought of that all right off the top of my head. It was a complete dad joke, if that. I wouldn't give myself credit for that.
Yeah. I love Hurst as a cash play because I think he's tight end 4 on the year in PPR. He hasn't had any blow-up games, and he hasn't had any bagel games. He's been 8 or 9 points just about every week. And at that position being so thin, I mean, that's a good floor for cash games, but I don't see a very high ceiling for him either because he doesn't see enough targets.
Yeah, okay. I can understand that 100%. I do like him in the cash games. That makes sense. Now, on to our next game. Go ahead and let us know what that one is.
This is a surprise. You guys are probably not expecting somebody to go out and tell you to stack the New England and Houston game.
I had no idea that was coming.
It was coming. Houston is a 2-point underdog at home against New England, so that's surprising to me with how the two teams have been playing lately. And 48.5 total, which I fully expect to get busted up very early on in the game. It's going to be, I think we're going to see a tit-for-tat shootout, kind of back and forth scoring game between these two teams. It's just a game where I don't see Houston slowing down the power running game, and that's going to lead to play action big plays. Houston really doesn't stop the pass either, but they're especially harmed by the power running game. And the Patriots, that's their game. They want to hit you in the mouth with Damian Harris, with Cam Newton in the goal line situations. They're gonna hit you with a change of pace with James White and Rex Burkhead. They're gonna take lots of shots at Jacoby Myers. That's just the way that they've been playing the last 4 or 5 weeks. And Houston's not going to be able to stop any of that. Houston hasn't stopped anybody this season.
And I will add in, by the way, a lot of people are afraid with Jacoby Myers and him seeing a reduction in volume because N'Keal Harry's coming in. N'Keal Harry has no impact on Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers has almost been exclusively in the slot so far this season. Right. Meanwhile, it's Julian Edelman that has actually been affecting the snaps and him not seeing it. I think the Patriots are going to want to see what they have in their young guys. So I don't think that Jacoby Myers is going to be affected. So who are you going with as a stack in this game?
So I'm stacking both directions with this game. I do see this as the biggest potential for a shootout that will not be chalky at any stretch. So I'm doing a lot of Cam Newton with Damian Harris stacks, your quarterback running back stacks, where I'm getting just pure volume in a cash game. And so if I'm going GPP, I'm going to go the other side with Deshaun Watson, and even going with both Cooks and Fuller, who I see are great values this week. Cooks and Fuller are both down the field, stretch the field speed receivers, and that's who have torn the Patriots up this year. if you look back 4 or 5 weeks ago, before the Patriots had this really long stretch of no passing attacks that were really threatening, they got burned by downfield passing, Stephon Gilmore included.
Yeah, Stephon Gilmore struggles with speed significantly. We saw it.
Right.
It kind of like was kind of exposed to an extent with John Brown last year, about halfway through the season, when John Brown just burned him on these deep routes.
And then DK Metcalf this year. I mean, we've seen it multiple times. Yeah,
so I like that call. So which side are you feeling more comfortable stacking? Are you sitting there thinking that it's going to be the Deshaun Watson show, or do you think it's going to be more the Cam Newton show? Like, which one would you like to play quarterback, and which one do you want to build off of and try and run it back on the other side?
So for GPP, if we're talking stacks, we're talking tournaments, I want the most upside points. Like, I want to see a ceiling game, and I want to see the most likely ceiling game from a performance. And
points on points, baby.
All the points. I want to see flames next to every player, because that's how you win money on the tournaments.
I like flames, unless it's like flames all the way in the fourth quarter and you're sitting at 0 points, so you see a flame because they scored a touchdown.
Right, that's not good.
No,
Deshaun Watson is a flame performer this week. I think he has a slightly lower floor than Cam Newton because of the rushing aspect, but we're talking Deshaun Watson's very quietly having a huge season this year without DeAndre Hopkins.
Really? What's he sitting at?
QB 4 or 5. He's putting up huge points, and we're talking where he's playing hero ball. He's playing the Michael Jordan role that his college coach talked about. Dabo Swinney said he's Michael Jordan. Well, Deshaun Watson's playing like Michael Jordan right now. He's the only show in town on his team. He's playing with Will Fuller and a bunch of other guys, and it's still working. He's still a fantasy relevant quarterback, even if his team sucks because the defense can't stop anybody.
Yeah, that's crazy. So on this slate, he's actually the third highest scoring quarterback in points per game for healthy quarterbacks. So that's absolutely nuts. Herbert and Aaron Rodgers are above him, so that makes perfect sense. Meanwhile, when it comes to pricing, he's all the way at number 5. He's the 5th most expensive, so you're going to save a little bit of value over here, and he has a great matchup.
And I think the other two guys Rodgers has a brutal matchup against the Colts, and Herbert's just downright chalky. I mean, Herbert's going to, against the Jets, you think everybody and their mom's going to have Justin Herbert going. He's got his fresh new haircut from his coach. I mean, that's the full systems go for everybody to go on Herbert and watch him have a middling to basement performance, because once they get up by 20 points, they're not really going to put their foot on the gas.
No, that's the reality of it up against the Jets. So, yeah, Steffi and her mom will be playing Herbert this week.
Of course. Yeah. Well, Daniel Jones is not playing this week, so that makes sense.
So who are we stacking with Deshaun Watson? We already talked about Jacoby Myers getting an opportunity. Potentially
he's a great run back.
Damiere Byrd, if you want to take a flyer, up against the Texans. So who are we looking at? Who are we looking at on the Houston side of things?
So I like both Cooks and Fuller, and I don't like either of the running backs, or Duke Johnson or whoever the hell they run out there at running back. It's just not a good. I mean, some people are on Duke Johnson. I'm not. And Jordan Akins, Fells, not interested. Give me those top 2 wide receivers.
Yeah, I'll take that 100%. But, it gets to the point where Bill Belichick starts getting tired of, mistakes. And, we saw it obviously in the playoffs and in the Super Bowl as well. But I'm kind of interested to see if he starts using bracketed coverage on Gilmore's side, since Gilmore does struggle, with covering, speedier type targets and deep threats. So that's something I swear, I could see Randall Cobb actually performing okay underneath in cash games. I'm not going to be playing him in too many of my tournament lineups because I don't think he has the upside, but, at his price, and he makes sense. Now, I do want to mention, of course, and this was brought up by you, was the Houston's tight ends. Now, Akins is the main guy over there. Is he even healthy this week, actually? I believe that he is. Meanwhile, Fells is the touchdown guy, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm actually leaning towards Fells to be able to score up against his secondary. I know that they've been, semi-tough overall, but for some reason, Deshaun Watson can get these guys open. And obviously it has a lot to do with him running inside the red zone and creating that opportunity, allowing them to find time and being that big target. But I kind of like Fells a lot in this game. How are you feeling?
I mean, in the tournament, you try the tight end position's a crapshoot every week.
God, last week was so bad. It was so bad.
Really bad. The 7 kickers outscored the tight end one. That's scary.
What was it, 13 points or something, or 15 points?
13.1 was it was 3 players that had 13 plus, and it was 13, 13.1, 13.1, and nothing above that. And there were 7 kickers that scored 13.1 or more.
Oh, it was so bad. It was so bad.
So I mean, if you're throwing pointy darts at potential touchdown makers, he's on the list. I'll say that.
And honestly, their ownership is going to be just
Nothing.
bottom of the floor, like nothing. And they're pricing $2,500 for Akins, who was the starting tight end to start out the year, and $29
he's the move
for
tight
Fells.
end. Yeah, he's the more athletic guy. Fells is more of your blocking tight end, but they sneak him out of the. They sneak him.
And he
off
gets
the
those
line.
TDs, baby.
Yeah, he gets the 2 for 6 and 1 lines, and so I mean at his price. Even at Aiken's price, where you get him 3 or 4 catches for 40, 50 yards, there's your value. I mean, if you're building a lineup that needs a cheap tight end, they're on the list.
All right, let's hop on to this last game that we're going to be working our stacks into. And then we got sneaky smart plays. And then we got our hot shots by Hotbox Batch. So let's go into this last lineup, and let's go ahead and discover who you want to actually play, which is kind of shocking at this over-under, in my opinion.
You're shocking. You're shocked at 47.5, or you're shocked that I'm thinking it's going to hit over pretty easily?
I'm kind of shocked at this over-under just because both defenses have been so bad.
Yeah, I mean, the Vikings have been okay lately. They've had one bad matchup that they did well in with Chicago. And then they had the Packers. They held to 20 points. That was pretty impressive. And so the Vikings' pass defense to start the year was horrible. Like, they couldn't stop anybody. They're still down, starting their 4th cornerback. But I guess these guys are doing better because they're not giving up points like they did earlier in the year. I think that's just a product of good coaching. I mean, they're just a well-coached team, and it's kind of like for me, it's just like the upside of the Cowboys' talent with Dalton coming back gets unlocked a little bit more than with whatever mall cop they were starting before. But we're talking about Andy Dalton with a pretty full stable of thoroughbreds over there that are going against still a bad defense for Minnesota. So I am surprised that it's at 47.5.
Yeah, it's a little low, just because of the ways these defenses are playing. So give us who you want to stack in this game. What side are you going to lean on? Where are you going with this?
I don't like Dalton as much as a fantasy player. I think he'll have a solid game, but I love Kirk Cousins' upside in a weaker opponent. He's coming off a primetime game that gives him the willies. Like, Kirk Cousins in primetime, especially against the Bears defense, that was impressive. He put up a good amount of points. Hit a 3.5 to 1 value for his late game there, and got his first Monday Night Football win. And so
I actually liked him a lot this past matchup. I had him in a lot of different spots. Big fan of Cousins this past week.
He's going up against the Cowboys. The Cowboys, 31st in the league in defensive efficiency. They're missing Trey Diggs, and they just got Cheeto Uzie back, but that so far hasn't panned out to be much better than Diggs, who's learning on the go.
Yep. And it's honestly, it's just been completely just a mess after they cut Dontari Poe. They named Antoine Woods as a starter at defensive tackle, but man, it's something as to where like Dalvin Cook could absolutely be a play at 9K. It's a little bit much, but how many weeks did we go last year? How many weeks did it take us to realize that Christian McCaffrey was going to be a value until he hit over 10K? And it wasn't just 10K, it had to be over 10K. And that's something that we have to realize. Like, if we sit there, right, and we look at Kirk Cousins' upside, we look at Adam Thielen's upside, Justin Jefferson's upside, all these guys could be achieved values, even if you play Dalvin Cook, because of the overall cost of, stacking 2 or 3 of these players. How, which wide receiver do you feel more comfortable playing when it comes to Thielen or Jefferson?
I'm playing both of them. This is the game where I just see Kirk Cousins having a ceiling game, and both of those guys just eating the Cowboys alive.
Wait, but you can't play Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook, and Thielen and Jefferson, right? Which one are you opting out?
I'm off of Cook because the Cowboys' run defense has snuck into the top 10 against opposing running backs the last few weeks because of Antoine Woods. Dontari Poe is just a salary thief. He came in on a big contract because of his name recognition, and he's not a good player. He wasn't playing hard. He wasn't practicing hard, and he was a cancer in that locker room. As soon as they cut him, they saved some salary. They promoted Antoine Woods. He's been playing out of his mind. He's stopping the run. Leighton Vander Esch is a great run-stopping linebacker. He's been healthy and back. That run defense has improved. Their pass defense has not. And so I'm on both wide receivers, but I'm leaving Dalvin Cook off of my GPP lineups because everybody's going to have him, and he's 9,000. I don't want to spend up for somebody who everybody's going to have.
Yeah, and there's no other pivot in this play, and I don't think you should pivot because I don't think this is going to have a lot of big time ownership in this. So, I'm not looking to play like Chad Beebe. I'm not looking to play Olabisi Johnson. Maybe Irv Smith Jr. if he gets activated. With his value that makes sense, but yeah, I can't go that. The big one that I want to talk about, though, is running it back and who I want to run it back with. And Zeke, by the way, has actually scored less than Jonathan Taylor has over since week 3 or something along those lines.
And that hurts me as a Cowboys fan who is a big, big JT proponent coming out of Wisconsin. Love me some Jonathan Taylor. And both of those guys in the same negative conversation just tears my heartstrings out. Just rips them out. One
is a wide receiver 3. I mean, a running back 3. The other one is a running back 4 by one place. And that's 36th and 37th ranked. It's absolutely insane how bad both these guys have played and the workloads that they've been getting to an extent. But yeah, I'm sitting there and I'm liking Gallup a lot this week. I mean, the biggest thing, and we were talking about a pre-show, was the fact that Andy Dalton, he knows how to look left. He can pull that Zoolander move or he can pull that move that Zoolander could not and turn left. So
yeah, and Teddy Bridgewater is Zoolander. He doesn't turn left and look at DJ Moore. And so you have Dalton. It actually looks left first, and which is why he targeted Gallup more than any other player when he was active.
Yeah, and he gives Gallup an opportunity to make these jump balls.
Right. And Gallup is your vertical threat. He's a burner. He's good at running the go route. He's good at running the deep post, the deep fade, the deep comeback routes. Those corners for Minnesota are going to struggle against a guy that quick and that fast. And Dalton, if he has time, that's the caveat here. If he has time to take shots at Gallup, he will. And he will do it often.
All right. So tell me real quick what his price is.
Michael Gallup is 3,700, which is absolutely bonkers.
Dude, he's been playing with terrible quarterbacks, man. His value was what?
Like
all
I
the way
said,
up
he's been playing with mall cops at quarterback. Garrett Gilbert
value.
was didn't Garrett Gilbert quit the XFL, or he was in the XFL? And I mean, Ben DiNucci, rookie out of James Madison. What the hell was that?
No comment. But either way, we're talking about some major value to be had with Michael Gallup.
Huge value.
And a great run back option. I don't hate CeeDee Lamb either. I don't hate Dalton Schultz, but honestly, I'm going to stay away from Amari Cooper still. He's a little bit too expensive at 54.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Not a lot, but I could see him having a touchdown with 60 yards receiving. You don't get enough return on that.
I will not argue against anybody playing the wide receivers, any of the top wide receivers, the top 2 for Minnesota, the top 3 for Dallas. They're all underpriced this week. Every single one of them.
I'd still rather go with the upside of Michael Gallup for tournament purposes.
Of course. Okay. But even Cooper at 54, if you're building a lineup and you have 5,400, he's the best option in that range.
True.
And it's just crazy how much they've depressed the pricing of all 5 of these wide receivers that have huge upside.
So,
all 5 of them.
Let's go through a quick questionnaire. Would you rather play Marvin Jones Jr., who's $100 more expensive than Amari Cooper?
No, not this week.
What about Travis Fulgham or Tyler Boyd? That's crazy, man. Amari Cooper's down here with these guys.
Maybe Boyd. Yeah, Boyd, yes.
Not
Boyd's
against Washington.
I don't care. Oh, Boyd's a slot receiver. And so Washington over the middle has been torn apart. And so I'm fading T. Higgins. I'm fading AJ Green, of course. Everybody can fade him pretty easily this week. And even Joe Burrow, I see his upside being capped because Washington's great against the outside receivers. Tight ends and slot receivers have torn them up because their linebackers are slow.
So the issue with Washington and the slot receivers is the fact that they allow their slot corner to actually jump the routes. And so they do tend to get burned, but it's also big play, ability happening there as well. Yeah. Tight ends, they just can't defend the tight ends.
Cooper. Tyler Boyd, I'm taking over Cooper.
Okay.
Fulgham, no, because since Rager came back, he's been the focal point, and Goddard is a focal point. Fulgham was a very good safeguard. Like he was a guy that was a good route runner, great hands, but as long as there's other guys that are shinier for Carson Wentz to throw to, he's going to pick those guys. He's a big play thinking quarterback. And so Fulgham, there's nothing that says he can't do it, but I'm seeing a lot of attention paid to Rager and Goddard now that they're back.
All right, so let's go ahead and hop into we'll call it our sneaky hot plays, right? Because your hot sauce kind of sneaks up on you, right? Hot Box Batch?
Yes, it does.
Hotboxbatch.com. All right, so let's go with our sneaky smart plays. And these guys are plays that are right in front of your face, but not a lot of people realize are right in front of your face because that little red number that's next to it, or maybe it's the pricing. There's
These
so
are the
many
guys. These are the guys when they score the first and second touchdowns on Sunday afternoon. You're going to be like,
why did I start him?
Or, it figures. It figures he would go off when I didn't play it.
Oh, that's a good one, too. That is a good one. So, yeah, these are guys that is looking us dead set in the face, and we're just too dumb to realize it. And it happens to all of us. It happens to me probably at least 10 times a week in certain lineups that I have going. My first one that I wanted to bring up, oh, my God. This one is just, it's too good. And the reason why this one is too good is because of the fact that Bo actually brought this up to me in like week 5. And this guy was actually Dalvin Cook when it happened. I don't remember exactly what week, but it was around then. And I was like, man, I never really realized that these top end guys, who are relevant from week to week, but have a tough matchup, whatever the case is, they have these holes. And I know that happens with wide receivers a lot more often, but running backs, it's units of defenses that stop running backs, not necessarily individuals. So I've been always looking for that wide receiver that's high price that can have the hole, up against that red number, not necessarily the running back. But yeah, Derrick Henry. Up against Baltimore, who is 8th up against the running back so far this year, right? Like Derrick Henry, dude, he struggles up against these tough up against these tough teams, right? Like that's what happens.
Yeah, you would think the Ravens would be well equipped to stop Derrick Henry, but
the Ravens.
Did you watch the game last week?
Well, that was a rainstorm, but still.
Who gives a crap? That means they knew that the ball was going to be run.
True story.
They knew there was going to be run plays right in their face. And guess what happens when the Titans give the ball to Derrick Henry? They're running it right into your face.
So the Ravens are actually struggling up against the run as of late. 3 of the past 4 games, they're allowing at least 4.4 yards per carry. What's even a bigger, factor into this is that they are 31st in explosive run rates over this past 4 games. 31st. Meanwhile, in these past 4 games, only one team has run more than 20 times in a game up against the Ravens, which is absolutely insane. I believe last week they ran 28 times because of the rainstorm. Every other time they've ran less than 20 times per game. Calais Campbell's out. This could be a massive, massive game for Derrick Henry. And his ownership isn't even inside the top 10. Not even inside the top 10 of running backs.
I think I saw it between 3 and 8%.
That's crazy. That's insane to me. That makes no sense.
At that price, the weather is getting colder. And when the weather gets colder, Derrick Henry averages 7 yards a carry for his career. Because
Oh
if
my
you're in a
God.
game outside and it's 30 degrees or colder, guess who's the last guy you want to wrap up or make contact with? It's the guy that's 6'4", 250, running 22 miles per hour.
Maybe you'd want him to wrap you up, keep you all warm and
Yeah,
stuff and stuff.
yeah.
Just saying.
Can we cuddle later, Derek?
Henry.
Derek, can we cuddle later? Because I'm extremely like he's gonna break these guys into pieces.
You broke all my fingers off, Derek. You're gonna have to snuggle me later to make me feel better. God, like it's blowing me away. Like I don't understand it. It makes no sense to me.
Well,
I'm playing Derrick Henry in a lot of lineups.
It's this beautiful mesh between a tough matchup on paper, which isn't that tough if you look at it, and the last 4 games he's scored under 20 points. And one of those games he scored under 10 points. Very un-Derrick Henry-like numbers. And so it's this nice little mesh point where a DFS player can spend up on a guy and get the upside of a 30-point game.
Do you have another guy in here for this?
Miles, I don't know his middle name, Sanders.
Wait, why do you need his middle name?
I don't know, just for emphasis, some guys like to throw out the middle name like Devontae Lavelle Adams.
I feel like it's definitely a J. Like, oh man, that would be actually really cool. MJ, but no. Miles J. Sanders just sounds about right.
Yeah, not James or Jimmy. It's Miles J. Sanders.
Miles Jimmy.
Can we get Alexa? What's Miles Sanders' middle name? Yeah, no, he's my guy this week. I'm planting my flag in Miles Sanders across different formats. He's medium owned, so I'm not too afraid of playing him in a GPP. He's going against the Browns. The weather's not going to be ideal. It's going to be better than the last couple weeks. But Sanders is a big play waiting to happen. He was vultured out of 2 touchdowns last week. He's going against the Cleveland Browns in a game that is probably going to have moisture. And
have moisture.
Yeah.
It's going to be very moist over there.
Yeah, so moist.
We just lost all of our followers.
Yeah, gone. Bye-bye. So, yeah, if Damian Harris can rush for 120 yards on the Ravens in the rain, I think Miles Sanders can rush for 120 on the Browns in the rain.
I like it, man. It was something that was big behind. And, they're talking about having more running back by committee type stuff. Well, they also have to run the ball more. Like, they have to run the ball more. I mean, Miles Sanders, how many games has he had over 20 carries so far this season? I don't know if he's had any.
Maybe 1 or 2 at the most. And it's a tragedy because when they give him 20 touches, they're pretty much undefeated in his whole, like the last year and a half that he's been a pro. They don't lose when they give him the ball.
It's insane to me. It drives me insane. And I know it drives a lot of other people insane, but good news, guys, if you have him in Dynasty, if you don't have him in Dynasty, he's going to be even cheaper. If you do have him in Dynasty, he's still going to be fresh.
Yes.
So buy up all the Miles Sanders you can after this season.
He's too good to not want on your team.
He could end up being like the Aaron Jones of next year, but Aaron Jones that didn't produce.
But he's a very similar player to Aaron Jones. He's got a nose for the end zone. He's a great receiver out of the backfield. He just needs the ball in his hands, and he will do special things.
And he's a better athlete too.
Oh yeah.
And by the way, I hated Miles Sanders last year. He had a fumble on every 30.8 carries in college or something like that, which is absolutely insane.
Not good, Bob.
I was off him last year. I'm on him this year, and I'm going to stick on him at least until halfway through next year. We'll see what happens.
We had the same fumble warning signs for JT, unfortunately.
Well, JT is actually the one guy that I wanted to bring up, so thanks for the intro. He's the last guy I want to discuss on here, and I don't really have a reason as to play him outside of Green Bay and outside of his ownership levels probably being close to nothing because people don't trust him. But yeah, he's a guy that they have to get him the ball 15, 20 times a game. Like they have to in order to get him up and running. And Nyheim Hines was not built to carry this heavy workload. I understand that he's had issues with vision and then he struggled from time to time, with I guess beating guys out of the backfield. But guys, this dude is still a rookie. He's been dealing with open holes that he just has to, poke his head through from time to time. So it's something as to where he just needs a little bit of time to learn how to run behind a subpar offensive line, which, by the way, the Colts are one of the best offensive lines in the league when it comes to pass blocking. Last year, they were terrible. This year, they have not been good. So Keep in mind, Marlon Mack had like the 54th worst run blocking rate in the league last year, just for the record. Did I say Marlon Mack? I hope I said Marlon Mack. All right, so let's go ahead. Or do you have something to add to that?
No, I mean, I think if we look at metrics for run blocking, they're 29th in the league this year at opening up holes. So JT's vision hasn't been great. We've seen on tape that he's missed some very big play opportunities by taking the wrong gap. But it's more about sequencing and timing with him. He's a big body with a lot of speed once he gets going, and they just haven't given the ball enough to get in a rhythm. And so I think if they do click, it's going to be really special. We just got to know when it's going to be. I'd like to have a crystal ball for JT to break out.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, let's go ahead and jump into our final section with these flyers. We will alternate players that we picked, and then we're going to actually build a lineup for you guys on DraftKings to figure out our best optimal lineup with these two, well, one giant brain and one hardworking brain that probably works 10 times harder than I should have to work, but yet it is what it is. So
I do wear a very large hat.
I forgot to put on my beanie. All right, so let's go ahead and let's talk about our flyers. You can start it out.
So we're on Salvan Ahmed, and yeah, I like Salvan Ahmed as a flyer. He might be a little chalky. I mean, when I wrote the show sheet, he's a good value running back at 4,800. It's for me, he's limited upside. I'm a little worried about that, but his price is right. So if he hits 10, 15 points, I'll be happy with that. Yeah,
I mean, Salvan Ahmed has a ton of upside. It's somebody that I loved throughout the whole entire offseason up until his combine. He completely ruined his chances at the combine, went undrafted. I was like, great. He ended up on the 49ers. He has a chance to actually compete for a starting spot. I wasn't as high on him at this point, but then he ends up getting cut. He ends up in the Dolphins behind a bunch of scrubs. I like his chances. He's going to have to compete with, a few snaps here and there. And it's something that makes me a little bit nervous with Salvan Ahmed. He's not as high on my list as he was last week. I loved him last week. Absolutely loved him. But yeah, he's somebody that I do feel like you still got to take a chance on here and there if you're going to hop onto this Dolphins matchup. Now, the rookie that I'm actually picked for the running back position is going to be Pirine. Michael Pirine up against the Chargers. Listen, Michael Pirine, they're coming off a bye week with the Jets. All right, it's something as to where the Chargers, by the way, are kind of taking form of themselves back in 2019, where you could not pass on them. They're finally getting back to that role again. They've been very, very stout in the secondary. So with that being the result of it, they're also allowing teams to have these significant weeks as to where the run-heavy offenses can have these breakouts. If there was any week at all, as to where LaMichael Pirine could actually be relevant because they actually do a game plan for him to try and make sure that not only they don't have a bunch of turnovers up against the Chargers, which the Chargers are great at forcing turnovers, they also have an opportunity to test out their rookie to see if they're going to need to draft a running back in 2021. I think that this would be the week. Pirine is cheap enough as to where, hey, if you see a touchdown with 60 total yards, maybe a couple of receptions in there, he pays off big time for you. And you can go with some of these bigger plays.
Right. And I can't disagree with that. That's the Chargers haven't been that good against the run. They're kind of middle of the pack. Their pass defense is kind of the highlight of that team. So, they've been gashed before, and I can totally see it happen, especially if the Jets are smart. They're going to try to keep this at a low-scoring clip. They want to keep the Chargers within range to where they can make a comeback, because if the Jets want to win at all, this is their chance, because the Chargers, even with a lead, it's not safe. Like, the Chargers have blown so many games within 7 points that it's uncanny that they have so many close games and they lose every single one of them somehow. So I do see if they can run the ball effectively with Pirine and company, we're looking at a game where you might see a couple touchdowns from a guy like Pirine. And that's going to be the way they win if they want to, is to just pound the rock at the Chargers. Don't let Joe Flacco take shots at the secondary. It won't end well.
No, not like it did last week.
Well, it ended very poorly for Flacco because I think they buzzed Adam Gase down from the booth and said, hey, directive. What are you doing winning this game? You're looking way too good out there. Flacco looks like 2011 Flacco out there.
Oh God! All right, so who you got next?
Curtis Samuel. I mean, I've been tweeting about this guy all week long. Curtis
Really?
Samuel, Curtis Samuel, Curtis Samuel. He's the running back 2 on this team. He's the wide receiver 3 on this team. That combines to a good 10 to 15 touch floor for the guy, and he's a big play waiting to happen. It doesn't matter where they line him up. He is a gadget player with a ton of potential. He's only 4,700. As a wide receiver 3 in a build, I love Curtis Samuel because he's got massive upside, even as a running back in your wide receiver 3 set. Because Mike Davis has really slowed down since his first couple of games. When Christian McCaffrey first got hurt, Mike Davis stepped in, fresh legs, looked great. The last 4 weeks, Mike Davis has looked slow and old, and Curtis Samuel, when he runs the ball in the backfield, looks like the real deal.
Curtis Samuel is priced down here with Tim Patrick and Willie Snead.
Yes, and Willie Snead's way overpriced.
Zach Pascal.
Tim Patrick, yeah, same thing there. Way overpriced. I like
crazy.
Tim Patrick as a good flyer too, but Curtis Samuel in this game against Detroit, who can't stop a mobile like scat back type. They haven't stopped a receiving back all season, and Curtis Samuel's going to get those chances. Mike Davis is going to get more touches than Samuel, but he won't produce more yards and he won't score touchdowns like Curtis Samuel I expect to.
I like it, man. It's something that I can get behind to an extent. I don't love Curtis Samuel, but everything that you're saying kind of makes me like him. I'm probably going to play him in a couple lineups this week. So let me go ahead and jump into my next guy. And that's going to be Kerryon Johnson. I know. I get it. Kerryon Johnson is not a guy you ever really want to play. I understand.
He's a knee brace guy.
And by the way, I do like Adrian Peterson a lot more, but I feel like Adrian Peterson is going to be heavier chalk. Meanwhile, Kerryon Johnson out of the backfield is not a bad player. I've said this since he came in the NFL. I don't like him as a primary option in offense. I like him as a guy that shares touches in the backfield. I think that he's a better player than a player like Wayne Gallman, a player like Michael P. Ryan, who we just talked about. So it's somewhere as to like, I'm feeling okay about Kerryon Johnson this week. He's going to get, a decent workload. He's going to see targets, which is even more important because of the fact the Lions might be losing in this game. We just talked about the fact they're playing the Panthers. So I don't know, man. Kerryon Johnson for me at his pricing could absolutely smash faces. And we sit there, we look at main, running backs being out. We look at Joe Mixon being out, right? We look at Aaron Jones being out. We look at different star running backs being out, Miles Sanders being another one, and all of a sudden their backup is relevant. I understand that it's still kind of like a timeshare, but the amount of times they run the ball over there and the amount of value that they get from their running backs with Kenny Galladay still being out, why in a late game scenario where the team is losing isn't Kerryon Johnson more of an option?
He absolutely should be. We've seen Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson hasn't done anything with all the volume he's gotten this year. Nothing. He's putting up no points for fantasy. He's not scoring touchdowns. He's a big nothing of stealing points from Swift until last week. And then Kerryon Johnson's also better than Adrian Peterson at this point in his career. He's younger, fresher, if there is, such a thing as fresher with a guy with chronic knee pain, but the guy's still a young back and he's still got lots of potential. He's still a really good receiving back. So yeah, absolutely Kerryon Johnson this week in that role where he steps in to that Swift type of role where he's going to be handling third down and in between the 20s. Give me all the Kerryon Johnson because he could break one. I don't see AP breaking one.
Yeah, it just makes too much sense for me. Now go ahead and let's run through these last two and let's go ahead and build a lineup real quick. These are on to your last two picks.
So, I'll throw them together. I like Devin Duvernay against the Titans it's just your pointy dart, min price, can catch a deep ball from Lamar Jackson type guy. And then I have Donald Parham as a tight end dart throw. It's pretty straightforward. If you're saying who do I think might score a touchdown, Donald Parham, kind of getting off the Hunter Henry chalk there. He's been getting a lot of red zone looks, lots of goal line looks, because he's 6'8". What's not to like for Herbert throwing to a guy who's 6'8" against nobody his height?
Makes sense.
And then Duvernay is a speed rookie. He went to Texas. He's a sprinting champion, and Marquise Brown hasn't been doing it all year. He hasn't made that connection with Lamar Jackson. So, I mean, I think Duvernay at his price is just as likely to catch one of those bombs as is Marquise Brown.
I can't disagree with you on that. I love Duvernay. Big fan of Duvernay. I want to see him succeed in this offense, and he gets used a lot more than what people realize in different gadget type plays. He could become that player that scores, just like, by the way, Curtis Samuel, who you mentioned. And I feel like they're going to utilize him a lot more come towards the end of the season. They need to figure out what they have in him for the playoffs.
Exactly.
So let's go ahead and build this lineup. We talked about a few different stacks, so let's use one of these stacks that we talked about. We have the Deshaun Watson stack. Mm-hmm. We've got the Kirk Cousins stack, which you talked about. Is there a certain stack that you really want to attack the hell out of? Because before we talked about this, I loved like the Ben Roethlisberger stack. Maybe we want to go that way, but then I thought he might be chalk. Which way are you leaning?
I mean, going against the Steelers right now, especially their passing game, it just doesn't make sense because the Jaguars haven't stopped run or pass all year. But I don't trust Connor, just like last week. I didn't trust Connor to be that solid floor running back, even in a plus matchup. And he threw out another dud performance, and the Steelers, even way ahead, were throwing the ball because they couldn't run the ball to put the game away. So they just decided to keep scoring touchdowns.
Which, by the way, makes an obvious play for Juju Smith-Schuster, which I meant to bring up and I did not.
Yes.
But let's go ahead and go with one of the stacks we've been talking about.
Sure. You can either go with either Watson or Taysom Hill stack.
Okay, so you want to go that route. Let's go with Watson.
Okay with it? I'm okay with it.
I feel like Taysom Hill by the time chalk hits is going to be just over the top.
Way over the top, yeah.
So let's go with Deshaun
everybody's
Watson.
just kind of making fun of him today, but by tomorrow when they're actually setting lineups, they're going to have him more than they think.
Exactly.
Yeah, the price is too good.
All right, so Deshaun Watson, and let's pick out one of these wide receivers up against New England. It's probably going to be Cooks if I had to guess, right?
Cooks is only 5,200, which is a great price. He's going against J.C. Jackson, who's really good at picking balls off, but has been burned just like Gilmore. I think Gilmore will be on Fuller most of the time. But J.C. Jackson has made some big plays. He's a ball hawk, but he's getting burned just as much as Gilmore down the field. He's your physical type corner.
How do you feel about going a single stack in this one? And then trying to find value other places because there are so many other value plays.
Oh, yeah. I'm totally fine with that.
Who would you rather go with, Brandon Cooks, or would you rather go with Will Fuller? Because I think Will Fuller will see the volume.
Right. And I think Will Fuller is also more likely to throw out a 30-point performance.
All right, let's go with Will Fuller then. We're going to kick ourselves in the asses.
When Cooks goes off, yeah.
Cooks goes off. All right, so
it could happen.
Let's go defense next in this one because we didn't talk defenses all that much.
Right.
The Chargers, we talked about Joe Flacco turning it over a little bit, but Dolphins versus Denver just seems too sweet to pass up. Meanwhile, they're probably going to be really heavy in chalk.
That's true.
I kind of want to see the Washington football team up against Joe Burrow and see them get the sacks on. Plus, Washington has been kind of porous as of late. So I kind of want to see Washington in this matchup. How are you feeling?
I have a lot of Washington, and I have a lot of Packers against the Colts because I think Rivers is he's gonna have to toss the rock around, and he's very turnover prone. But Washington is definitely in play for me.
All right, let's go with Washington on this one. All right, so we're gonna have to play one of the running backs. In Washington up against Cincinnati, I just feel like it's an Antonio Gibson game written all over it.
Definitely Gibson game.
Over McKissick, right?
Yeah, actually the Bengals are surprisingly good against receiving backs. They're third in the league against receiving backs. but they've been just killed by regular running backs. So, and it's definitely a Gibson game.
All right, let's take it. Rolling with it.
Great price too. I can't believe Gibson's not getting any markup from how much he's been scoring lately.
It's insane. Like, he is literally, like, if we sit there, we look at it, right? It is absolutely insane. His price is over other running backs in this area. I mean, he's priced right around Jamal Williams, Boston Scott,
Tony Pollard.
Tony Pollard.
Who's a great back, but doesn't get enough touches and hasn't all year.
No, it's absolutely insane. I mean, you have to go all the way up to, like, Todd Gurley, sure. James Robinson is the next closest guy when it comes to pricing compared to his points per game. You know, that's absolutely nuts. You know that Gibson actually has more points per game than DeAndre Swift. That's crazy.
Gibson, I think, is PPR running back 3. So, he's been healthy. He's been on the field, and he's scored touchdowns. That's a recipe for good running back play, especially under 6,000.
All right, so that's leaving us with a remaining salary of 28. So that allows us to play some studs over here.
Oh, yeah, and that's what I want to do.
That's what I want to do. All right, are we playing running back studs or wide receiver studs? Because I feel like it's more of a running back stud type of week over. Okay, so let's go running back.
And there's a great number of value receivers under 7 this week, so we can definitely take advantage of that.
Alvin Kamara, you said was a lock?
Yes.
Lock it in? Are you sure? Because they got Atlanta. Atlanta's really tough.
If not, Kamara, Derrick Henry.
I think we have to play Derrick Henry.
Yeah, we talked about him.
If we play, let's keep Kamara in our thoughts. I don't know if we're going to be able to fit it in. But we could with certain values.
Yeah, I have a build with both of them, so it's definitely possible if we get there.
I think we should have Jacoby Myers, right?
Absolutely.
As a run back. I completely forgot about that. We probably should have talked about that earlier.
I have seen Jacoby Myers' ownership projected as high as 16%, so we can take that into consideration. That's not overly high, and I don't expect that to trend any higher before kickoff.
I like it. Absolutely love it, actually. All right. Yeah. And then was there a wide receiver that we actually had as a flyer on that matchup? I know that we talked about Curtis Samuel, but Curtis Samuel won't allow us to play a stud, so we'd have to go super low on this.
Yeah, so Michael Gallup was the only one that came to mind at 37.
I like Gallup a lot.
We were both on Gallup, so I think he has to be in our build. If we're building together and we agreed on a guy, he's going in, okay, Chase?
That's very true. All right, so if we try to fit in Alvin Kamara at 92, that's going to leave us at 28 for the last tight end position. Okay.
There's some in that range.
You had Donald Parham, Mo Alley Cox we play up against Green Bay because Green Bay is great up against the wide receivers when Jair Alexander's healthy. Adam Troutman, I forgot to talk about Adam Troutman this week. Josh Hill is out. Adam Troutman is still dominating snaps. He's
a real tight end, unlike Taysom Hill.
Yeah, he's a real tight end. I love Adam Troutman this week, and I didn't bring him up.
Yeah, is there Harrison Bryant going against as your not Hunter Bryant, Harrison Bryant going against a Philly team. Hooper, he's your alternative to Hooper, who I see as a pretty good play at his price range. But yeah, I do like your guy there, Troutman.
Yeah,
Troutman or Harrison Bryant, flip a coin.
God, man, I kind of want to play both of those guys. Like, it just makes too much sense.
I think Troutman is still sharing with Jared Cook, and he's not on the field as much. I don't think he gets as many snaps as Harrison Bryant.
Adam Troutman has actually led the team 2 weeks now in snaps, and he's beat Jared Cook out 4 weeks total. However, one had to do with an injury. Right. So he's actually had more snaps than Jared Cook. Meanwhile, Harrison Bryant, he was second in the team last week. He did lead the team the week before that and the week before that. However, that had to do with the injury to Austin Hooper.
Right.
Prior to that, he pretty much
about target volume?
I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Yeah, I don't think either one of them get a ton of targets. So, yeah, I like flip a coin. I like Troutman.
So I feel like we could actually take a shot on Troutman with a lower ownership percentage. Like, who's gonna be playing Troutman?
Not a damn soul.
I feel like, like Harrison Bryant. I'm not saying shouldn't be played.
Well, no, at this price, you just throw a dart, man. They're both pointy darts, as I like to call them, and so yeah, no problem there. And I don't have any trouble at all leaving 300 on the board because we got guys that in their brackets are the best in their bracket.
Any thought on Tyler Eifert being an option?
No.
Okay.
No.
I mean, he's averaging like 3.5 points.
Now that I say that, he's going to score twice, but
Houston's the only game that he had over 5, or Houston and Tennessee are the only 2 games where he's had over 5 fantasy points, only one in which he scored it.
He's
all right, so that's our lineup, right?
On the field, yeah.
I'm entering it in.
Let's do it.
Let me go ahead and read that off since I accidentally pressed stop instead of back. Sean Watson, Antonio Gibson, Derrick Henry, Will Fuller, Jacob Myers, Michael Gallup, Adam Troutman, Alvin Kamara, and Washington football team's defense. Enter. We are locked in. If we win $1 million.
Big studs in that running back position.
Dude, oh my God. Let me read these studs. Antonio Gibson, Derrick Henry, and Alvin Kamara. That is sexy.
Oh, new pants. Need new pants.
All right, guys, that's going to finish up our episode for us. Make sure you guys go check out Join Our Circle. And Bo, you want to let everybody know where to find you, my friend?
At Bo_McBigTime. All my work will be on my page, well retweeted.
A Facebook user said, keep Kamara in. What are y'all, crazy? Linus D gives up points.
That's true.
We agree with you. That's why we had to fit Alvin Kamara back in. But if you listen to the episode, we believe in Derrick Henry a lot too. So
yeah, that's a shoehorn. We got to force him in there.
Oh, dude, it's getting forced to walk in. Anyways, guys, thank you all for tuning in. If you guys want to find me on Twitter, ff_intervention, make sure you guys check out all of our content. Check out our team. We appreciate you guys for staying in and dealing with us for this DFS matchup this late at night. Once again, thank you guys for listening. Thank you all for letting us intervene with your fantasy football life. We're out.